This story begins on the day a normal-looking student, Ayano Kiyotaka, commutes to his new high school, the Tokyo Metropolitan Advanced Nurturing High School. While on the bus, Ayano watches a scene play out in front of him. A blonde-haired girl asks people on the bus to give up their space so an elderly woman can sit and rest during her trip. Most of the students there refuse to give up their seats. Luckily for the old woman, someone gives up their seat and the ride continues smoothly. Ayano gets to his new school and walks towards his classroom. On his way there, a girl stops him and asks him why he was staring at her back on the bus. Ayano calmly tells her he just happened to be looking her way and that it's nothing. The girl murmurs some other self-elevating nonsense and Ayano waits for her to finish before getting to class. So the Tokyo Metropolitan High School is a prestigious school that boasts of having a 100% employment rate after graduation and is also said to admit only the best students in all of Japan. Ayano joins the other freshmen as they listen to the president of the student council give them a welcoming speech. While the president delivers his speech, Ayano finds out he's in the same class as the sassy lady from earlier. Even worse, they sit next to each other. After the orientation, students of Class 1D, Ayano class, all assemble in their class and wait for their homeroom teacher to show their faces. While they wait, the interim class representative asks everyone to introduce each other so they can be more flexible in choosing friends. While the others introduce themselves, Ayano keeps wondering what he'll say to everybody. He's scared he might cringe his classmates out as there's nothing that interesting about him. When his time comes, Ayano makes a half-assed introduction and tells his classmates about his boring lifestyle. The students still appreciate the effort and clap for him. At that moment, their homeroom teacher enters. She introduces herself as Chabashira-sei and hands out copies of the school's rule book to the students. She then moves on to explain the special rules of the school and tells them they will be confined to live in dorms with very little permission to go out of the school premises. Not to worry though, as the school has all the facilities any normal teenager would want, including a cinema for entertainment and a nice park for relaxation. Furthermore, Sei tells the students about the currency they would be spending at the school. Each student is assigned 100,000 points to spend every month to buy stuff only within the school premises. After class, Ayano gets to the supermarket on campus to get some stuff he needs. There he runs into the sassy lady from earlier. He asks for her name and she tells him she's Horikita Suzune. He notices she was buying all the cheap stuff despite having lots of points at her disposal. He tries making a good conversation with her, but she just keeps pushing him away, telling him she doesn't need any friends. Just then, they hear someone screaming at the top of their lungs. They go check it out and find out Sudo, one of their classmates with anger issues, just got into a fight with some Class 1C students. Ayano stops the fight and continues his day. A few days later, Ayano classmates begin forming groups. Ayano realizes how much of a failure he is in making friends. He takes a walk in the corridor and finds Kushida, who asks to talk with him. Kushida asks Ayano to tell her some information about Suzune, as she wants to be friends with her. The school continues for the rest of the day and Sei delivers their final lecture. After class, Suzune talks to Ayano about the leniency Sei was displaying towards the students. Turns out the students were just lazing around, not minding whether Sei was there or not. Ayano asks Suzune to accompany him to the cafe and she reluctantly accepts his plea. On getting there, they find a free table and set up camp there. Kushida leaves her seat and walks over to theirs to talk with Suzune. Suzune smells something fishy with Kushida getting closer. She gets up and leaves. Kushida begs her to be friends with her, but Suzune rejects her proposal and leaves. On their way back to the dorms, Ayano finds Kushida's friends with students from other classes. They discuss the point system and how much they're given to spend each month. Eventually, Ayano gets to his dorm in peace. That night, Ayano thinks about how badly his classmates had spent their points. He also gives their nonchalance towards their classes a thought and calls it a day. The next day is the start of a new month. This means the students get new points right, wrong. Sei walks in majestically and has her revenge on the students for ignoring her classes. She tells them the school only dishes out points based on the homeroom teacher's assessment of the class. Sei tells her students she didn't rate them at all, so they aren't receiving any points for that month. The students of Class D take the devastating news pretty well, as many of them hit the swimming pool during leisures to cool off from the steam. Suzune joins Ayano near the pool and they stare at the beautiful and busty Kushida, who's playing with some other girls in the pool. Suzune gets inquisitive and asks Ayano about the S system, which is a system that ranks the classes A to D based on their performance and attitude towards their studies. Upon admission, each student is given 100 class points, which would dwindle every time they do something bad. By the end of the month, Class D, the most effective class in the freshman year, had 0 points to spare due to their nonchalant attitude. To get it back up, they would have to pass tests and exams and also prove to the school one way or the other that they deserve to be awarded class points. Ayano reminds Suzune that she's one of them, the losers, and won't have to work with them as she plans on overtaking the rest of the classes. Suzune takes a look at Ayano hands and asks if he plays sports. Ayano tells her no. Just then, Kushida gets out of the pool and asks Suzune to swim with her. Again, Suzune rejects her proposal and just continues her way. Soon, the class rep calls everyone together and tells them they have to work together if they plan on getting any more points. Shijou stands and watches from the other end of the pool in disgust. A few meters from her in a room, the president of the student council congratulates two Class S students for getting 940 points in their class. After the PE break, the students change back into their uniforms and head back to class. Suzune invites Ayanokoji, short for Ayanokoji, for lunch during their lunch break. By then, she buys him an expensive meal and tells him about her plans to create a study group for the dejected students of their class just so they can pass the upcoming tests and exams. Ayanokoji doesn't want to get mixed up in too much stuff, but Suzune tells him he has no choice. She gives him her contact information and leaves him to decide. Ayanokoji picks it up and asks some of the worst students in the class to join the study group. All say nay. That evening, Ayanokoji calls Kushida's dorm through the firm's internal line and speaks to her. Kushida picks up the call and asks what the problem is. Ayanokoji asks her to supervise study groups for Sudo and some other underprivileged students in their class. Being the nice person she is, Kushida accepts the role and gives Ayanokoji her contact. After the call, Ayanokoji finds out Kushida already got the three dumbest students on board. He then calls Suzune to ask her if she would let Kushida teach the students. Suzune tells him she can't allow that. Kushida finds out and decides to do something about it. The next day, Ayanokoji, Suzune, and Kushida set up a small interview for the underprivileged students in her school. As expected, Suzune talks down on every student there, and this causes the others to leave without getting interviewed. After they leave, Suzune regrets asking Ayanokoji and Kushida for help. Kushida gets up to leave and promises to do something about the matter on the ground. Suzune gets very insulted and asks Kushida what her real mission was. Kushida leaves the place crying as Ayanokoji just sits there and observes what's happening. That night, Ayanokoji steps out of his dorm to get something. He finds Suzune and the president of the student council club talking. The president is her brother and was very ashamed of his sister for getting admitted into the most dejected class of the entire school. He holds Suzune up and goes in to punch her. Ayanokoji, who was watching the scene play out, steps in and saves Suzune from injury. The president attacks Ayanokoji for interrupting their discussion, but he dodges every hit. The president gets impressed and asks about Ayanokoji's background. Turns out Ayanokoji intentionally got a 50 in all entrance exams just so he could get admitted into Class D. The president leaves shortly. Ayanokoji and Suzune sit somewhere around the school to talk. Suzune asks him if he rigged his exam scores as her brother said. Ayanokoji tells her it's all just a coincidence and then talks about the students. School goes on normally the next day and the next. A few days after midterm, Sei announces the test results to the class and congratulates them on passing excellently. The whole class erupts in joy after finding out they passed their midterm test. Everyone has Kushida to thank for helping them study their hardest subjects and passing. 3 days before the test, Ayanokoji sees Sudo fighting with the same Class C students again. This time, their boss, Ryuen, stops by to tease the guy with anger issues. Sudo is held down and almost used as a plaything if not for Ichinobu's of Class B, who came at the right time to stop the fight. Ryuen and his goons are forced to leave Sudo alone. Ayanokoji also joins in and tells Sudo to keep his cool next time. Once the whole fight's settled, Ayanokoji asks Sudo to join Kushida in their study session. Sudo refuses to do so and gets to basketball practice instead. After practice that day, Suzune meets Sudo outside the auditorium and gives him some summaries of their subjects in class. She tells him he has to study if he wants to keep playing basketball in school. Sudo accepts it in good faith and gets home. The next day, Kushida meets Ayanokoji in the cafeteria to buy off some midterm past questions from a second-year student. They propose to trade off 10 points for the past questions and call it a deal. The dude tells them he wants 30, but Kushida and Ayanokoji negotiate the price to about 15. The dude accepts the new price and gets right down to business. After lunch, Ayanokoji and Kushida take a break outside. Kushida asks him if it was legal to have past questions. Ayanokoji tells her it's perfectly legal and it is within the school rules for them to do so. Just then, the dude sends them the past questions they need. Ayanokoji cross-checks it with the one from 3 years ago and finds out they're the same question. Kushida immediately gets happier, but Ayanokoji tells her to tell everyone she was the one who got the past questions as he doesn't want to get into the spotlight just yet. A day before the test, Kushida hands out the past questions to her classmates and tells them to study hard before their tests. Everyone feels relieved and thanks her for her service. Fast forward to the present, Sei tells them although most of them passed, there was one person who couldn't get the pass mark. Sudo, the hot-headed basketball dude, got 39 instead of 40, the pass mark. Now he has to get expelled. Every one of his classmates tries to reason with Sei to get Sudo's expulsion revoked. However, she refuses to do such a thing and leaves the class. Ayanokoji follows her to the roof and talks about rules and virtues with her. Sei asks him to cut to the chase, so Ayanokoji asks her at a point to Sudo's score just so he can remain in the class with them. Sei laughs and tells him it's impossible to do such a thing. Ayanokoji asks how many points he would need to spend to get her to change her mind. Sei tells him 100,000 points. Ayano Koji doesn't have up to that amount of points, so he tries another way. Thankfully, Suzune joins them and offers to pay half of the price alongside Ayano Koji, just so they can buy the point for Pseudo. Sing smiles as she knows she has no choice but to accept the deal. After class that evening, Ayano Koji thanks Suzune for helping him out earlier. Suzune tells him she only did such a thing for her benefit. Ayano Koji tells her not to pretend that he knows she intentionally got a lower score just so the dumb students in the class won't feel left out. Suzune punishes him for saying that out loud. A few hours later, the students all gather in Ayano Koji's room to celebrate Sudo's return to their school. The students ask Ayano Koji how he changed Sei's mind, but he tells them Suzune did all the work. After the party, Ayano Koji and Kushida remain to clean up before going to bed. Before leaving, Kushida asks Ayano Koji if he likes Suzune. Ayano Koji tells her she's nothing but his neighbor. Kushida thanks him and leaves. Before she walks far, Ayano Koji notices she forgot her phone behind. He follows her but doesn't find her in her room. He traces her movements and finds the innocent Kushida cussing at Suzune for being hard on her. Ayano Koji gets exposed and he shows his face. Kushida's face changes into a monster ready to eat anybody up. She asks him if he saw what she just did. Ayano Koji tells her he saw nothing. Knowing he was lying, Kushida threatens him not to ever breathe a word of what he saw to anybody or else she'll accuse him of raping her and ending his career. Surprising turn of events, right? Ayano Koji promises not to say anything and Kushida returns to her innocent little self. On the next school day, Class 1B's teacher announces the update on their points to them. In the meantime, Ayano Koji joins Kushida and Suzune on the elevator down to their dorm as they get to class. Ayano Koji recalls the state he found Kushida in the previous night and is surprised to see her close to Suzune again. Suzune stops midway and walks out of the elevator, leaving a sad look on Kushida's face. Ichino's finds them and asks whether they already got their points. Clearly no, as Ayano Koji and Kushida express their surprise at her question. In class, Sei tells the students there's been an issue in the point dispensation program. Class 1D would have to wait for a while before getting their points known to them. Ichino's asks Ayano Koji to meet with her later on after class. He gets to a secluded place in the school and finds Ichino's already waiting for him. Ichino's cuts to the chase and asks Ayano Koji to pretend to be her boyfriend. She tells him she found a love letter in her locker and didn't want to hurt their feelings by telling them no. If Ayano Koji can be her boyfriend, even if it's for a week or so, then maybe the other person would get the memo and stop chasing her. Ayano Koji tells her he wants no part in the drama and that she should tell the person how she truly feels. Just then, Shikoro, the person who sent the letter, meets with Ichino's. Ayano Koji gives them some space to talk. Later on, Chihiro runs out crying her eyes out as if she was just rejected. Ichino's comes out with a smile on her face and thanks Ayano Koji for helping her out. Ayano Koji gets back to class after he meets with Ichino's and finds Pseudo shouting out loud and telling his colleagues he was taunted into attacking some Class C students. C walks in a while later and informs the class that Class C filed a complaint against Pseudo for fighting 3 of their students out of spite. Pseudo tells her that he acted out of self-defense, but none of his colleagues believes him. Seeing as he has little control over his temper, it's not completely impossible to think he would do such a thing. That night, Ryuen, the boss of Class C, is seen enjoying his time in the school's bar. One of his goons walks in injured to report the incident with Pseudo. Instead of consoling him, Ryuen has his bouncer beat him up more so he looks completely like the victim. The next day, Suzune asks for Ayano Koji's thoughts on whether or not he regrets not having Pseudo expelled when they had the chance to. Ayano Koji tells her it won't do their class any good if they lose any one of their colleagues. Surpassing the class ranking system is a team effort, and they need all hands on deck. Just then, the class rep calls everyone together to help prove Pseudo's innocence. Everyone, including Ayano Koji, agrees to help him out. Suzune refuses to give her answer and just walks away. Kushida meets up with Ayano Koji and sets up a meeting with Ayano Koji and 2 other students after school. That evening by the fountain, Ichino's also joins them and offers to help Ayano Koji and his colleagues out. Ayano Koji refuses her help as he suspects she may have a hidden agenda. Ichino's tells Ayano Koji to keep calm and she just wants to help them out. Later that day, everyone begins investigating the crime to find who's innocent. At one point, Ichino's receives an anonymous text explaining their next lead. She wants to pay the person some points, but she doesn't know how she could do it since the person is anonymous. Ayano Koji helps her out and finds out she had 2.6 million points as opposed to the 100,000 she's supposed to have. That evening, the students all meet at Ayano Koji's dorm room to table their findings. Suzune arrives shortly and joins them. She tells the group that she found out Sakura was the one who sent the anonymous text earlier. She was the only one who witnessed the fight happen. Just then, Sakura, who's in a dark room, receives a call from Kushida, but she refuses to pick it up. Suzune tells them not to worry too much about her since her testimony won't matter that much. Later that night, Kushida visits Ayano Koji to talk about the case. They take a walk around campus and Ayano Koji first engages her in a speech about crime and stuff. Kushida asks Ayano Koji if he truly knew all about Suzune or not. Ayano Koji tells her it's impossible to know everything about someone. Kushida's about to ask him something, but she stops halfway and leaves. The next day, Kushida meets with Sakura to ask her about the crime. Sakura hurriedly rushes away and apologizes for doing nothing. Turns out she doesn't want to get involved in the case as she fears it would expose her secret life. Ayano watches Sakura run away from Kushida and wonders what she could be hiding from everyone. He gets an idea that she's probably a webcam girl, but he can't confirm his suspicions just yet. Later on, Sakura meets up with Ayano and Kushida in the mall on campus to fix her camera, which broke when she hit Kushida earlier on. The creepy tech repair guy checks the camera and deems it worthy to be fixed as it's still in the warranty period. As he checks the camera, he gets very weird and creepy and asks Sakura for her phone number and contact details. Sakura, scared of the guy being a predator, gets very reluctant to fill in her contact details. Ayano fills in his information and tells the tech guy to contact him instead when the repair is done. Sakura thanks Ayano for his help in the mall earlier in the day. As they relax under a shed, Kushida takes a bathroom break, leaving Sakura alone with Ayano. Sakura asks Ayano for some advice on whether she should testify or not. Ayano tells her to do whatever she thinks is right. Sakura thinks hard about her decision. Ayano butts in and tells her to testify for her sake and not for anybody. Kushida returns and asks Ayano to meet with her later that night. When they meet by nightfall, Kushida exposes Sakura's hidden life. Ayano suspicion is right. Sakura is a webcam girl. The glasses she wears on her face are to conceal her true nature when she's in school. While they discuss, Sakura sends Kushida a text telling her she'll testify. The next day, Suzune accuses Ayano of being too friendly with Kushida and ignoring her. Ayano keeps a straight face and just gets down to the important details. By noon, select students of both classes 1D and C are summoned to the student council board to face trial with the president as the judge. Ayano is there with Kushida, Suzune, and Sudo. The Class C representatives are also there with their own lawyers. After reading the details of the case, Sudo flares up and tells everyone Class C started the fight. When the time came for Suzune to speak up, Ayano finds her spacing out for fear of her brother being in the same room with her. Ayano snaps her back to reality and tells her to speak out for Sudo and the class's sake. When she's back to life, she interrogates the Class C students. She asks them incriminating questions and tells them it makes no sense for one guy to beat up 3 strong men without getting injured in the process. The boys refuse to confess, so Suzune asks Sakura, her witness, to give her testimony. Sakura steps in and tells the board all she saw that day in the gym. The Class C lawyer quickly quells her testimony, calling it hearsay. Sakura tells him she has proof of the event in a flash drive and shows it to them. The president collects the drive and plays it there. There, they find incriminating pictures of herself, but they keep scrolling until they find that one picture that had the boys holding and threatening Sudo. After seeing the picture, the lawyer steps down from punishment and asks for a suspension for both students. He asks for Suzune's opinion on the matter, and she refuses to settle for anything less than the truth. She then turns to her brother and asks for his judgment. The president finally speaks and tells him he's adjourned the meeting to 4 p.m. the next day. After the meeting, Sakura apologizes for her incompetence. Ayano tells her to be proud she helped them out. Just then, the president walks outside and has a talk with Ayano and Sakura. He asks them if they can really prove that the boys are innocent. Ayano tells him he can and he will. Sakura gives a little information about her life. She's been a lonely, depressed young girl who's used to being the sad student of society. She used to think her secret job wouldn't come back to affect her until one night at school, one of her fans sent her an incriminating text. The next morning, Sakura finds photos of herself in her locker room. Elsewhere, Ayano and Suzune talk about their next move. Ayano wishes there were security cameras in the gym so they could just check the footage. They eventually come up with a brilliant idea they'll execute later on. In the meantime, Ayano finds Sakura alone in class and thanks her for helping them exonerate Sudo. In return, Ayano promises to protect her from harm. Sakura thanks him and proceeds to tell him some other stuff. However, Ayano receives a text from Sakura informing him she's already sent the email. Ayano has to leave and get down to the basketball court. So Suzune had sent the Class C boys a letter from Kushida's phone just so they wouldn't be able to ignore it. On getting there, they find Ayano there. One of the boys gets up to leave the court, but Suzune blocks them and tells them to listen to what Ayano has to say. Just as they're about to leave, she shows them the security cameras they installed moments earlier. Since the boys didn't know when they were installed, they were convinced that the entire fight was caught on tape. They start fidgeting and Ayano calms them down. He makes sure to talk in a way that makes them get more scared. The boys are confused about what to do. If they press on and the school finds out they were lying, they'd be expelled for sure. The only way to go around this, which is what Ayano and Suzune suggest, is to withdraw their complaints and act like the incident never happened. One of the dudes takes out his phone to call Ryuin, but Suzune tells him they don't get to do that. Eventually, they fold and withdraw the complaint. That evening, Sakura gets a stalker to follow her to an alleyway. Ayano on the other hand, meets with Ichinos to discuss his victory over the Class C goons. He receives an SOS call from Sakura and picks it up. Seconds into the call, the obsessed stalker catches up to her and pins her down. He threatens her to follow his every move or he'll post her secret life on the net for all to see. He then proceeds to open Sakura's shirt, but doesn't go very far as Ayano arrives and takes a picture of him. Turns out the stalker was the tech repair guy who helped Sakura fix her camera earlier on. Now his life is ruined and Ayano promises to make it hell-like for him. Soon, the police are there to arrest the man. Sakura tells the man that she never thought of him as her fan and should go to hell. After the incident, Ayano shows Sakura how he found her and tells her to hold her head up high and be proud of who she is, Cambrel or not. Sakura blushes and gets up to her feet. In another part of the school, C meets up with Suzune and asks how they managed to get Class C to withdraw their complaint. Suzune gets sassy again and just keeps babbling nonsense. C just gives her one piece of advice: to find out all she can about Ayano before it's too late. Ayano has a secret skill or life that makes him stand out from everyone in the entire school. That evening, Ayano runs into the president of the student council by chance. The president's so impressed by his actions on the case that he offers him a position as secretary. However, Ayano refuses the position as he doesn't want any more drama. At that moment, Ryuin punishes the boys for withdrawing the complaint and asks them who threatened them. After giving out the names, Ryuin moves forward in the ring and meets with some students of Class A and promises to take them down alongside their other plans. Meanwhile, Ayano meets with Suzune, who accuses him of manipulating to get false evidence so they could get the C dudes to drop their complaint. Ayano just walks away, but Suzune stops him and asks who he truly is. Ayano has a flashback to his former life, and it wasn't a good one. He looks Suzune in the eye and tells her never to pry into his life. Suzune is shocked. A few weeks later, the students finish their term's final examination and are now on their summer vacation. One morning, Suzune wakes up and freshens up to get ready for her day. A few days before that morning, a group of boys from Class D gather around a corner to discuss an important mission to alleviate their loneliness, Operation Peep in the girls' changing room. Fast forward to the present moment, Suzune packs up her swimsuit and heads toward the pool to join the others. On her way there, she finds the two new lovebirds, Harada, the class rep, and his new girlfriend, Ki, who ask her to join them in activities more often. Suzune tells them no thanks and joins the others at the bus stop. There she finds Kushida as lively as she could be and wonders why Kushida still talks with her despite her bitchy attitude towards her. Just then, the three jolly friends, Suno, Ike, and Yamauchi, join them at the bus stop and accompany them all to the pool. When they get there, the girls gather in their changing rooms to change into their swimsuits. They talk about how close Ayano is getting to the girls around him. Kushida tries taunting Suzune into getting jealous of Ayano, but it doesn't work. Elsewhere, one of the students reminds his fellow comrade on the radio to complete their operation and peep into the girls' changing room before the girls get back home. Sudo and Ike, who are on guard duty, try their best to keep people by the poolside and away from changing rooms until their operation is done. When Kushida gets suspicious, they quickly suggest they play volleyball to pass the time. The girls are reluctant to play, but they eventually get down to it and have fun. In the meantime, Yamauchi poses as a cleaner and sneaks into the changing room after placing a "Do Not Enter" sign in front of the door. Soon, the girls gather in front of the bathroom as they all wait for the cleaner to be done. Inside, Yamauchi struggles to install the camera in the ceiling. Kushida keeps asking after Yamauchi and gets ready to get to the bathroom. Ike quickly signals to their fourth guy keeping watch to abort the mission while they still can. The fourth guy calls Yamauchi and tells him he's out of time so he should abort. Minutes later, Yamauchi rushes out of the bathroom and joins the others on the volleyball court. Just then, Ike pretends to have his stomach aches, so he rushes to the bathroom to continue Yamauchi's job. Ryu and his goons pass by the bathroom and stop at the entrance after seeing the "Do Not Disturb" sign. Their fourth guy signals to Sudo to go assist Ike. Sudo races to the bathroom after receiving the signal. He gets to Ryuin and tries to stop him from entering the bathroom. Things start to get heated between the two, but Sake Energy, the queen of Class A, steps in and quell all negative energy between the students. The president also steps back and makes sure nobody fights on his watch. Meanwhile, Ike gets cold feet and almost gives up on his quest. However, the fourth guy speaks some sense into his head and tells him not to abandon hope after all the hours they put into the mission. Ike regains his confidence and keeps on working. Sudo practically forbids anyone from entering the room. Ayano, who intercepted one of the fourth guy's signals, asks Suzune to give everyone a speech about Class D getting to the top. She makes sure to pass the time while Ike finishes his stuff. She does so and delivers the speech perfectly. Ike manages to finish installing the camera and leaves the changing room. When she's done, she sneaks to the changing room and removes all the cameras set by the crew. Then she joins Ayano by the pool. Ayano decides to let her have fun by pushing her into the pool. Soon the others join them in the pool and everyone has a very good time. That night, Suzune goes to sleep with a picture of herself and her friends in the pool enjoying themselves. Ayano joins Sei, who is watching a school play about Ikaris and his father on a luxury cruise ship. Apparently, the school had sponsored a boat cruise for the students to further enjoy their summer vacation. Ayano gets disgusted at the play and calls it a waste of taxpayers' money. Sei gets right down to the point and tells him a certain man came to the school earlier asking them to expel Ayano. Since he hasn't done anything wrong, he should be fine. Turns out Sei had other thoughts in mind. Being his teacher, she has the power to expel him whether he's done anything bad or not. So she proposes a deal. Ayano Koji helps her class climb up the ranks to become the next Class A, and in return, she won't expel him. Ayano Koji loses control for the first time and tells Sei not to double-cross him. However, Sei tells him he doesn't have a choice but to accept the deal or risk getting expelled. Ayano Koji reluctantly agrees to help his class climb up the ranks to get to Class A. The next day, the students all come out of their rooms to check out the luxury boat and the sea. The cruise boat Esperanza has all the luxury items one can wish for. While the girls play around, Ike, who's with Ayano Koji, Yamachi, and Sudo, finally decides to ask Kushida out. He musters the courage and meets up with Kushida to ask her out. Unfortunately for him, he bricks up and ends up asking her another question instead. Sudo suddenly gets encouraged to ask Suzun out. He asks for a little info about Suzun from Ayano Koji and decides to get down to it. Later that afternoon, the four dudes get to have lunch in the standard restaurant setting. Sudo and his boys all get so confused at the menu that they start shouting for the waiter. One of the class is students insult Sudo and his boys. This naturally riles Sudo up and he reacts. The students begin murmuring about Sudo's lack of control over his temper and they're forced to leave. Elsewhere, two teachers who are getting massages discuss their class students. Ayano Koji retires early to his room to think about his discussion with Sei earlier on. Hirata knocks on his door and asks him to hang out with him. However, Ayano Koji refuses to go with him. Hirata then asks if he could help connect him with Suzun. Before Ayano Koji gives him an answer, Hirata receives a call from his girlfriend and leaves. In another part of the ship, Konji, the bashful, muscular, and narcissistic member of Class D, walks in the ship's corridor with nothing but pants on. The butler asks him to wipe his wet body, but Konji is focused on making a mess everywhere. A few hours later, Suzun meets with Ayano Koji to discuss the school's true intentions behind this luxury cruise vacation. While they discuss, Ryun passes by and teases Suzun. His ex-girlfriend, Ibuki, walks by and confronts him over his recent attitude towards her. Ryun becomes disrespectful and Ibuki raises her fists to punch him. However, Ryun's bouncer, Albert, steps in and throws Ibuki away before leaving with his master. One of the school teachers receives a report from a student named Masumi. She thanks her for her help and tells her to await further instructions. Later that night, Sakura practices how she'll ask Ayano Koji out. Speaking of the devil, Ayano Koji appears behind her and tells her not to hesitate to ask him for help. Sakura holds his hands and smiles. Kushida joins them and Sakura runs away. Ayano Koji restrains himself from talking to her and excuses himself. Before he gets far, Kushida switches to her other more serious self and asks Ayano Koji why he's refusing to speak with her. Ayano Koji ignores her and just lets her bore herself out. The next morning, the students are called on deck to witness the island they were approaching. Little did they know their summer vacation was about to end. Everyone gets out to sightsee the beautiful island in all its splendor. Soon, the students are called to assemble and await further instructions. When the time comes, Sei tells the students about the one-week special test the school hosted for first-year students. The students are shocked as they never expected that to happen. After dishing out instructions to the students, the teachers release them to begin their test. They leave them with 8 tents per class and are to share their basic provisions during the one-week period on the island. Also, each class is allocated a total of 300 special points. They're to use these points to purchase anything they want during the one-week period and can spend it all. However, special points that remain after 1 week would be converted into class points and allocated to the respective class. To earn extra points at the end of the test, each class would be given a chance to guess leaders of the other classes. If they get the answers right, they get an extra 50 points. If they get it wrong, they get 50 points subtracted from their remaining special points. Students of Class D come together to decide what to do. While some suggest they enjoy their lives and lavish their 300 points, Hirata and some other serious-minded individuals suggest they all manage their special points so they can get more class points allocated to them after the test. A little bit of murmuring ensues amongst the classmates until someone brings up their choice of the toilet. The school gave them some portable toilets to answer nature's call. However, the girls feel squirmish over using such a toilet, especially when the hygiene is questionable. So they protest and tell the boys that they have to buy a toilet clean enough to help them avoid infections. After much arguing, Class D eventually begins their journey into the island's forest to search for a camping spot. On their way there, Ayano Koji and Suzun discuss their plans to take their class to the top ranking. This goes on and on until they all decide to take a break. Hirata finally breaks the silence on the toilet purchase issue. He decides to buy a good toilet for the girls so they can feel comfortable while working together. Following his decision, he asks for volunteers to help scout the forest for a good camping spot. A few students, alongside Ayano Koji volunteers and Hirata, split them up into teams of 3. Konji goes with Ayano Koji and Sakura. Konji keeps jumping through the tree branches, leaving Ayano Koji and Sakura struggling to catch up. After running a few hundred meters, Ayano Koji and Sakura find a cave. Ayano Koji suddenly recalls Sei's words. If they're lucky enough to claim a marked spot on the island, he will be granted unspendable bonus points that will add up to their class points after the test. Also, another way to earn extra points would be to correctly guess the names of the leaders of other classes. Just then, Katsuragi, leader of Class A, and one of his other colleagues come out of the cave and discuss some of the things they noticed about the island. Ayano holds Sakura's mouth and hides behind the bushes to avoid getting spotted. Katsuragi senses someone lurking behind the shrubs and goes to check it out. Lucky for Ayano, he didn't find them. When he's gone, Ayano releases Sakura and goes to check out the cave. There, he finds out that the cave was already claimed by Katsuragi. They get back to camp and find out Ike and Sudo already found a great camping spot with a river and fresh green grass as padding. The students are a bit reluctant about claiming the spot, but they eventually do so if they have no choice. They appoint Suzune as their leader and urge her to claim the spot for them. So Suzune gets the leader's keycard and claims that spot. Then everyone begins pulling out and laying their tents. Suzune refuses to do any hard work and just waits till the others are done before getting under her tent. That evening, one of his classmates comes to Ayano asking for the best way to ask Sakura out. Soon, Ayano, Sakura, and the other guy walk around the forest. They find Ibuki all battered up and thrown away from her class. Sakura and the other students of Class D offer her sanctuary at their camp, and she accepts it reluctantly. Later on, Ike makes a campfire and the girls return with some fresh fruits from the bushes. Everyone hails Ike for helping them with the fire and all settle down to eat their food. Ike apologizes to the girls for not supporting them earlier about their toilet issue. With things back to normal, Hitara gives everyone an explanation on how they can spend their points for the week and still have about 120 points by the end of the test. A few hours later, Kushida and other Class D students attend Ibuki. Moments later, the students discover Konji had gone back to the ship claiming he's sick. This is bad for the class as the teachers would penalize them for one narcissist's mistake. In a flashback to Ayano earlier years, little Koji is seen solving complex calculus equations alongside other kids almost as if they were in some sort of deranged experiment. One of the supervisors walks over to Ayano and tells him to use the power he has at his disposal very well. Fast forward to the present, it's day 2 of the test, and some of the boys and girls just caught some fish and fresh fruit. Hirata assigns tasks to every student and distributes the rations equally to each student. Later on, Ayano and Suzune scout the forest of Dong Recon in case anything comes up. Suzune expresses her surprise at Ayano helping her out with her recon task. Ayano tells her he has to protect her against Ryuen and his goons. Suzune nods in agreement. After walking a few more meters, the duo meets up with Ichinos, who leads them to Class B's camping site. Ayano and Suzune appreciate their neat and orderly approach to doing things. Eventually, they leave and find a Class A student guarding the entrance to a cave. Ayano urges Suzune to challenge the student and enter the cave. Katsuragi, who's inside the cave, hears the hubbub outside and checks it out. After hearing their plea, he allows them into the cave. Before they enter, he threatens to find them and cause trouble for them. Suzune and Ayano would rather avoid trouble, so they move on from the spot. At their next stop, they find Class C's camping spot with Ryuen as their leader. They approach him and confront him for spending their special points lavishly and leaving nothing. Ryuen tells them not to interfere with his business and just face their own. Suzune then asks him why Ibuki's face was left bashed up and abandoned in the forest. Ryuen admits to beating her up. He then tells them he has nothing to lose since there are no points left. Suzune leaves with Ayano shortly. On their way back, Ayano tells her Ryuen's 0-point strategy is actually a good one as they get to enjoy life all through their time there. Early in the morning of day 3, a creep sneaks into one of Class D's tents and steals something from Key's bag. A few hours later, everyone's fully up and ready for the day. By day 4, Ayano and Sakura hike into the forest to explore their beauty. They get to the C-Class camping spot and find out every C-Class member is gone. They also meet Ichinos and some other Class B students investigating the same camping spot and join them. Ayano asks Ichinos for some information about Katsuragi. She tells him Katsuragi is a pretty conservative guy as opposed to the queen of Class A, Sakayanagi, who's a reformist. Later that evening, Class D students sit and wonder why the Class C students would have quit the test. The best thing they could come up with is that they got tired of the test and left. Suno walks over to Ibuki and asks her questions about Class C. Ibuki becomes violent and insults Sudo for leaving their side. On day 5 of the test, the girls notice Key's stolen underwear and accuse the boys of doing the crime. They call all the boys out and ask Hirata to find the culprit. Soon the boy lines up with their bags in their hands to be searched. Before it gets to his turn, Ike decides to check his bag. Surprisingly, he finds the underwear there and is shocked. Seems like the person who stole the underwear that night had slipped it into his bag to incriminate him. With nothing left to do, Ike gives Ayano the underwear and rushes forward to get his bag checked on time. Ayano knows someone stuck the underwear inside Ike's bag and wonders who it may be. Hitara ends his search and finds nothing. The girls still don't believe him, so they ask for a pat-down. Hirata has no choice but to start all over again. Ayano gets worried as he keeps the underwear in his pocket. Hirata searches through his pocket and feels something soft and mushy underneath. Hirata acts like the real G and refuses to give Ayano up. Later that evening, Ayano asks him why he didn't expose him earlier. Hirata tells him he knows Ayano can't do something like that. He collects the underwear from him and takes the blame. Before leaving, he asks Ayano to find the culprit so his sacrifice doesn't go in vain. Now that's some real homie energy. Later that day, the girls propose they all separate the girls' tent from the boys' tent just to avoid any further underwear theft in the future. They pick Hirata, the class rep, to help move their tents, but Suzu steps forward and tells them to add another trustworthy boy, Ayano to make sure Hirata doesn't sniff any undies while moving the tent. Talk about going overboard. Anyways, Ayano and Hirata get down to work. While at it, one of the girls calls Hirata to come help them with something. Ayano continues to work on his own and finishes the tent by evening time. Ibuki approaches as he finishes his work and talks to him about the issues she's concerned about. Seeing as everyone was suspicious of her being the culprit, she asks Ayano what he thought of her. Surprisingly, Ayano tells her he trusts her. Surprised, Ibuki thanks him and leaves. After his work, Ayano walks back to the spot they found Ibuki some days back and rummages through the bushes underneath. He finds something suspicious and gets back to the camp. 2 hours later, Suzune joins Ayano who's alone by his campfire to talk about Suzune and her hidden behaviors. Ayano sees through all the small talk and tells her he knows she's ill and has been hiding it for a while now. He gets up from his seat and checks Suzune's temperature. Suzune tries to hide her illness, but her fidgeting body gives her right away. On day 5 of the special test, Ike, Ayano and Suzune get up early in the morning to gather some food. The others join them in their search for food. While at it, Ayano silently asks Suzune how well she's been guarding the key card. Suzune tells him she has it on her at all times. Ayano asks if she could bring out the card so he can see it. Suzune asks him if it's safe for him to see it, but Ayano tells her to trust him. She shows it to him and places it back almost immediately. Just then, Yamachi comes by and places some mud on Suzune's head. Suzune gets annoyed and throws him in the water. If not for Ayano who saved him, Yamachi may have died. Fast forward to a few hours, Suzune takes her bath in the river under the waterfall almost unclad. When she's done, she puts on her clothes and walks back to the camp. Ayano notices Ibuki's absence and keeps observing the situation. Suzune asks to meet him somewhere private, so Ayano follows her to a part of the woods. When they get there, Suzune breaks the bad news. Her keycard has been stolen. Ayano keeps his cool and tells Suzune to keep this hidden until they find the culprit. Suzune suspects Ki, who she's having a falling out with, or Ibuki, the weird Class C student. Ayano confirms Ki's innocence and talks about his plans to confront Ibuki. When they're done talking, Suzune asks for some time alone so she could sulk and resent herself. Minutes later, she smells some strong fire in the air and rushes over to the camp only to see that someone had started a fire and burned the manual. After the fire is put out, the class is thrown into panic as everyone begins blaming others. Ayano stays away from the fight and just keeps observing. Kushida asks after Ibuki but can't find her anywhere. This could only mean she's escaping. Sudo, the hot-headed dude, puts 2 and 2 together. Ibuki was the spy. They all turn to Hirata for directions on what to do next, but Hirata is busy having a mini freakout. Ayano brings him back to reality and he dishes out the tasks. Suzune chases after Ibuki and finds her walking away from the camp. She stops her and confronts her for stealing her keycard. Ibuki refuses to give up the keycard. She notices Suzune's shivering body and attacks her. Suzune uses all the strength in her body to avoid getting beaten up. Sadly, that wasn't enough against Ibuki, who pummels her to the ground and escapes. Ibuki presents Suzune's keycard to the person she works with and completes her mission. After knocking her out, Ibuki reaches into her bag, takes out a radio, and phones Katsuragi of Class A to inform him that she's completed her mission. Suzune wakes up hours later under a tree near Ayano. She tells him about her experience with Ibuki and resents herself. Ayano tells her to drop out of the test so she can treat herself. Suzune begins the waterworks as she blames herself for all that has happened. Ayano asks her why she's so focused on getting to Class A. Suzune tells him she needs to earn her brother's approval and would stop at nothing to do such. That night, Ayano carries Suzune to one of the teacher checkpoints. There, he asks Sei to help take care of Suzune, but she'll have to drop out. Ayano is totally fine, so he drops her off with Sei. Everyone finds out about the stolen keycard and Suzune's illness. Ayano tells Hirata Ibuki was the one who stole the keycard. Now they need to do so many things in such little time, or else they would have themselves to blame. On the next and final day of the test, everyone packs up their stuff and leaves their camping site. Each class is given a note to write out who they think is the leader of the other classes. In the class decamp, Ayano writes the names of those he thinks are the leaders and submits them. Later on, the teachers assemble the students and officially end the special test. Just then, Ryuen appears from the bushes all dirty and covered in bruises. Apparently, he stayed on the island. Katsuragi thanks him for helping Class A get over 500 points. Back on day 1 of the special tests, Katsuragi had made a deal with Ryuin to work together and earn themselves some extra bonus points. Ryuin is to plant spies in the other classes and have them steal their leader's key cards so they can correctly guess the leaders of each class and earn that extra 50 points without having anything subtracted. He made sure to have his class exhaust all their points and forfeit the test altogether so that he could retreat into the bushes and wait for his spies to get him all the information he needed. Their plan works out just fine and they all feel confident in themselves and their answers. On the final day of the test, Ryumin's teacher brings him a copy of the note and asks him to fill in the leaders of the classes. So at the moment we've all been waiting for. The teacher announces the final points to be allocated to the classes. Coming in last place was Class C with 0 points, Class A comes next with 120 points, and Class B comes second with 140 points. Class D, however, leads the other classes with a hopping 225 points. Everybody's shocked at this revelation and they wonder where they could have gone wrong. After their celebration, the students are called back to the ship. Shijou meets up with Ayanokoji to talk to him. On the other end, Hashimoto, one of Saki Energy's guys, confronts Katsuragi and gloats over his loss. Elsewhere, some students in Class B suggest switching classes to Ayanokoji's class. Ibuki apologizes to Ryumin for her failure. Ayanokoji exposes his entire plan to Suzune up until the end of the test. Ayanokoji had already figured out Ibuki was a spy, so he intentionally made Suzune show him his card, knowing that Ibuki would be looking, and made sure to set the stage to make Ibuki's theft of the card very easy. Everything played out according to his plan all along as Ibuki stole the card and reported it to the real leader. From observing the other classes well, he was able to find out each class's leaders in no time. Suzune is impressed and asks Ayanokoji why he suddenly helped them out. Just then, the students come over to Suzune to congratulate her for helping them win the test. Kushida finds Ayanokoji and tells him she hates Suzune. She then asks him who he would rather choose between her and Suzune. Ayanokoji chooses nobody and receives a text from Sei asking to meet her in the theater. On getting there, Sei commends Ayanokoji for his intelligence and planning. Ayanokoji asks for some proof about the man who came to ask for his expulsion. Sei tells him she knows everything about him and urges him to keep up the good work. Elsewhere, Ibuki finds out Ryuin would be awarded several thousand points every month. Seems like that's what he was really after. Suzune catches up to Ayanokoji and accuses him of giving her praise for his work. Ayanokoji tells her she's finally changing and would need allies moving on forward. Suzune blames it on him and grudgingly chooses Ayanokoji as her first ally and thanks him for all the help he's been rendering to her. In his mind, Ayanokoji knows he doesn't consider Suzune or any one of his colleagues as an ally at all. He sees them as tools he needs to win in a world where only winners are celebrated. After finding out the results of the Isolated Islands special test, the president of the student council wonders what Ayanokoji's next move will be. At that moment, Ayanokoji is seen reading a book on the yacht. He recalls the last discussion he had with Sei and wonders what his father or guardian meant when he says Ayanokoji would choose expulsion in due time. He lets his mind off too much thinking and joins the rest of his classmates on the deck. Life goes on normally for pretty much all students as they enjoy themselves. Kushida approaches Suzune only to get rejected by her again. Hirata meets up with Ayanokoji and invites him to eat with himself and his girlfriend Ki. Ayanokoji rejects his proposal and tells him he'll rather avoid being on Ki's bad side. Speaking of the devil, Ki finds Hirata and takes him away from Ayanokoji. Before the duo goes far, the announcer on the ship's P system announces the commencement of the second special test. The students are to get to a particular room by 6 p.m. that evening. After the announcement, the school sends emails to each student, telling them the room they're supposed to visit by 6. Hours later, Ayanokoji gets to room 604, the room he's supposed to be in. There he meets Yukumura, a student they call the professor, and one other teacher. Everybody keeps quiet as they all await the last person. Soon, the last person, Ki, arrives and sees Ayanokoji. She gets really uncomfortable and sits down. The teacher starts by explaining the perks of the test. So every student from classes A to D will be split into 8 groups of 14 students named after each planet in our solar system. All 14 students will be from different classes. This is a problem for Ayanokoji and his team members as they don't trust the students from the other classes. Nonetheless, they have to work together to make sure Mars group, their group, ends the test successfully. One of the students from each group would be chosen to be the VIP student, and the group has just 3 days to figure out who the person is. They're allowed to have discussions that will lead to them figuring out the VIP twice every day, and would rest on the 3rd day and finish the test on day 4. There are about 4 cases of how the entire test would play out. In each case, the VIP would be getting hefty amounts of private points. After reading out all the possible case scenarios, the teacher gives some final information and disperses them. That night, Ayanokoji takes some fresh air by the deck and thinks about the possible outcomes of this test. Ayanokoji suspects there is a traitor amongst them that will rat out their VIPs to the other classes. The next morning, the students get assigned to their various groups. Suzune is disappointed to find Ayanokoji isn't on her team. Nonetheless, she wishes him good luck on his team. Ryuin joins them later on with his bodyguard, Albert, and asks Suzune about how she got to outsmart him during the previous test. Of course, she refuses to divulge any information and just gloats over her own victory. Ryuin knows she's hiding something, so he annoys her a little, hoping to get some more information from her. Unfortunately, this doesn't work as Suzune only reacts a little. When Ryuin leaves, Suzune blames Ayano for giving her all the credit for their success in the first special test. Later that day, all students in the Mars group assemble to have their first discussion for the day. Ichino's appoints herself as the moderator and tries to bring everyone together. There's a little bit of discussion here and there until the members of Class A decide to refrain from helping the team win. Apparently, they have nothing to lose as they'll still be Class A whether Mars wins or not. Hamaguchi, one of the members, tries to speak some sense to the class as students. The discussion about Class A's abstinence from discussion goes on for a longer period of time than expected. Eventually, the class of dudes separate themselves from the meeting and change seats. After the meeting, Ayano gets to the lobby and finds 3 Class C girls picking on Ki. The girls ask her if she fought with her friend Rika earlier during the day. Ki tells her she doesn't remember hitting someone. The girls, who don't believe her, take out their phones to take her picture. Ki pushes their phone off their hands and forbids them from taking the picture. The girls begin to bully her into letting them take her picture. Maxia of Class A steps in and sends the bullies away. In the second discussion, the progress of the Mars group is still deadlocked as the Class A students refuse to help out. H&M suggests they create a group chat where they can all chat together and enjoy one another. A few hours after the meeting, Ki is seen taking a shower. She suddenly stops bathing and sits in a corner of the bathroom sobbing. In the first scene, Harada meets with Komonji, the body workout freak, to discuss with him the goals of the special test and how he wishes to participate. As expected, Komonji refuses to do anything and just continues doing his muscle workout. Harada ignores him and joins Ayano and one other person to discuss how to find the VIP. Harada tells his mates that someone had sent him the exact identity of the VIP of Class D. When asked who it was, Harada shows the duo that it's Kashiya. Just then, Komonji arrives and cancels the special test for the Jupiter group, leaving a look of shock on everyone's faces. That evening, Ayano receives an email from Suzune challenging him for not trying to stop Komonji from quitting the test. He meets up with Suzune and calms her down. Ayano asks for some information on Ki. He suspects that something's wrong with Ki and just can't seem to figure her out. Suzune tries to throw him off investigating Ki. However, Ayano tells her that ever since the test started, Ki has been acting somewhat off her normal personality. Suzune gets where he's coming from and asks him what wishes to do about it. Ayano refuses to give her any more information and just keeps his thoughts to himself. Ryuin interrupts their talk to frustrate Suzune again. This time he tells her that he's on track to identify who the VIP is and he'll stop at nothing to get what he wants. Ayano reasons with his logic and is surprised at how smart Ryuin is. To figure out the VIP much faster, Ryuin sees the phones of all the Class C students so he could check their emails one by one. Sounds like this dude really does fear no man. Before leaving, he asks for a merge between Class D and Class C so they can reveal their VIPs, learn about this game's logic, and crush Class A. Suzune refuses to join his team and he leaves. Elsewhere, Ki barfs in front of her bathroom mirror. She reminds herself that she has to be a parasite or she won't be able to survive on her own. At that moment, Suzune sends Ayano packing as she fears people may misjudge them to be a couple. Ayano leaves her and finds Kushida alone stargazing. He joins her and talks with her. They talk lightly and Ayano takes his leave. Before he gets far, Kushida rushes and tries to ask him out only to stop midway and leave for her room. In the bar section of the ship, the 3 teachers of classes B, C, and D all get together to take shots. Class B's teacher, Chi, teases Class C's teacher on his relationship status. Class D's teacher, Sei, however, asks Chi why she's always so curious and desperate to know more about her business. She hopes she's not trying to pay her back for the things Sei did to her ages ago. Chi tells her she's just interested in finding out more about Ayano who seems to spark her interest. On his way back to his room, Ayano overhears Ki begging Harada to protect her from the bullies plaguing her on the ship. She wishes Harada could hurt them and make them stop hurting her. However, Harada refuses to harm anybody just for a girl. Besides, it's not like they're really dating or anything. He's just following her around just so he could be her bodyguard. Ki breaks up with him at that spot and leaves. Ayano reveals himself and asks Harada whether or not his judgment is affected by Ki's toxicity. Harada tells him it all started from a rumor and Ki was just dating him for popularity points. Harada explains further that he still doesn't think Ki is her normal self as she's been acting weird lately, and he suspects it's because she's now being bullied again. The next day, Ayano and Kei are the first people to arrive at the conference room for their discussion. Ki asks him if he was the VIP, and he says no. Ichinos and the others arrive shortly and they begin the first meeting for the second day. Before the meeting starts, Ki goes over to thank Machida for saving her from the bullies earlier. The meeting begins and the entire group is still in a deadlock as Class A refuses to discuss the VIP details with them. Ichinos keeps trying to bring up some new information about the VIP, but the entire team is still in a deadlock. The discussion continues on for hours with no progress made. By the end of the second discussion for the day, Machida leaves Ki to go do his thing. Ki also leaves, and the three girls from Class C follow her to a hidden place in the ship. Ayanokoji and one other student catch on to the bullies' plan and follow them to the same spot of the bullying. On getting there, they hide and spectate the three girls who bully Ki. Ki begs her bullies to let her go, but her pleas for mercy only seem to fuel them the more. They bully her harder and make fun of her. Ki gets to live the horrible experience again as the girls treat her mercilessly. The dude with Ayanokoji quickly steps out of hiding and chases the girls away. Instead of thanking the guy for helping her out, Ki tells him to leave her alone. After the incident, Ayanokoji goes back to his room. He finds out that the Venus group had concluded their test. This can only mean someone made a VIP accusation. He suspects Ryuen is behind their folding, so he has to act fast. He sends Ki an email, pretending to be from Hirata, to meet him in the ship's engine room. Ki gets there and waits gladly to see her Hirata-kun. Unfortunately for her, her worst foes are the ones she meets there. This time, they bring Rika, the supposed person Ki assaulted earlier, with them. They corner Ki and take out their phones to take photos of the terrified girl in front of them whose knees are shaking. One of the girls figures out Ki's been bullied before and makes it her mission to make Ki suffer more than she's ever done in her life. Ki tries to escape their grasp, but they pull her back and slap her on the cheeks. They ask Rika to come to slap Ki on the cheeks, so as to feel the satisfaction of bullying someone else. At first, Rika doesn't refuse to do so, but with much persuasion from her peers, Rika begins to enjoy slapping Kei. Her friends cheer her on as she slaps the living out of Ki, who just stands there and refuses to do anything. A few meters away from the girls, Ayanokoji spectates as the entire event goes on in front of him. He takes out his phone and records the whole thing, but still waits for the girls to get Ki to her lowest point so she'll be submissive enough to help with his plans. When they're done with the bullying, the girls leave Ki crying profusely on the floor. Ayanokoji comes out of his hiding place and meets with Ki. Ki tries to act like nothing happened, but Ayanokoji tells her to cut the act and that he knows everything. To make her even more submissive, he speaks demeaning words to her and threatens to expose her if she doesn't do anything he wants. Ki asks him what he wants, and Ayanokoji tells her to spread her legs. Ki reluctantly opens her legs and waits for the worst thing of her life to happen. Ayanokoji opens her shirt and finds scars all over her body. He feels sorry and tells her he'll protect her from now on provided she does something in return for him. He then shows her the recording of the entire fight and tells her to threaten the girls the next time they come to bully her. As for what she'll do, he tells her she'll have to step up and control the girls of Class D so they can get to Class A. Ki is shocked to the bone as she never wants Ayanokoji would have any pound of balls in him. She gracefully accepts her new role as Ayanokoji's pawn and asks for her next assignment. Up next, Ayanokoji gets to say to buy something with his points. Very early the next day, Ayanokoji finds Ichinos sleeping peacefully in the conference room. Her alarm wakes her up shortly and Ichinos is back up in no time. She invites him to talk before the discussion and asks him about his dream to get into Class A. While they discuss, two other students arrive at the conference. When everyone's present, they settle down to begin the final discussion for the special test. Hamamuchi suggests they check each other's cell phones to find out who the VIP is. They would make sure not to expose the VIPs once they're found. Everyone raises their concern about there being a traitor amongst them. However, Hamabushi makes the group members promise that nobody would betray them. Even a little kid knows it's impossible for everyone to keep mute simply because the traitor gets a huge amount of private points if they get the correct name of the VIP on their first try. While everyone murmurs, Ayanokoji takes out his phone to join the challenge. Soon, everyone but Yukimura from Class D joins and shows each other their emails. Everyone sets their eyes on Yukimura and he finally exposes himself as the VIP. Ayanokoji just lies and waits for someone to betray them so they'll fall into his trap. So it turns out Ayanokoji had bought a SIAM card exchanger from Sei and exchanged his own SIAM card with that of the real VIP's SIAM card. Then he exchanged his own phone with Yukimura's just to set a double-layered trap in case someone got smart and called Yukimura. Well, thank heavens he set a trap twice as one of the girls calls Yukimura's phone and finds out he'd exchanged it with Ayanokoji. Everyone begins to hate Class D members as the discussion is called to a close. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji and Ichinos remain calm as they know there's still a chance at victory. Ayanokoji returns to meet Ki and tells her their plan is still in motion. He recalls his plan with Ki, the real VIP from day one the night before, and tells Ki to play his game to the end. Later on, Ichinos joins Ayanokoji and Ki in the lobby to discuss their plans with them. They all receive an email that shocks them all. Turns out Ryuen had already guessed the correct VIP name of Suzu's group, Kashiya. Class D members all meet at a bar to drink and figure out who their traitor was. Ryuen joins them and continues to gloat and frustrate Suzu's life, promising to crush the motivation out of her body. Ki, Hirata, Suzu, and Ayanokoji meet up in the restaurant to discuss the possible logic systems behind the schools choosing the VIPs of each group. They figure out a very simple logic behind everything and discover that it's the exact same logic the school used in picking VIPs in each team. Ryuen had figured out the logic earlier on and had used it to his advantage. However, they do suspect someone helped him confirm his suspicions. Another thing Ryuin doesn't understand is that there would be those amongst his class that oppose his dictatorship style of ruling. All they need to do now is wait and let the traitors destroy Ryuin from within. Hirata thanks Suzune for discussing this matter with them. After the second special test, all freshman students return to campus to begin the second term of their first year. During their first class, Sei tells them about the sports festival coming up in a few months' time. She tells the class to take the festival very seriously, as it will have a major influence on their scores. Moving on, Sei tells her class they'll be paired alongside Class A to make up Team Red. Meanwhile, Class C is to be paired against Class B to make up Team White. One more thing, the entire team would consist of students from all the years as well. Everyone grumbles about getting paired with their enemies and having to work with them toward a common goal. While Sudo gets pumped for the sports festival, the others are worried about how the events may turn out. Sei stops the noise and tells her students to read the materials given to them before deciding who to play for them. After reading through the materials, someone asks Sei if points from their wins would be added to their next written exams. Sei tells them if they manage to be amongst the top placers, that's exactly what will happen. However, if they place last, they'll lose points on their next written exams. Ayano Koji checks out the events and finds out they all have to participate in 13 sports events in just one day. Sei leaves the decision of choosing players in her hands and ends the class. Suzune jams Ayano Koji by the vending machine in the hallway and discusses her concerns about this sports festival. Ayano Koji tells her he knows the school has some ace up their sleeves about this test. If only he can figure out what it really is before they begin the test. Suzune asks him for any sneaky tricks they can use to put the odds in their favor. Ayano Koji tells her they may have to settle for fair and square for now until he figures out a plan. In their next class meeting, Sudo suggests they leave all sporting activities to himself as he's the most athletic of them all. Everyone just agrees with Sudo and leaves things in his hands. As they continue their discussion, Suzune gets up to present her own plan. She plans to combine people of weaker athletic qualities with higher ones so they can get more wins on their side. Someone opposes her point, but Suzune quickly hushes her up in a harsh way. The person sits down and Suzune stops talking. Just then, Ki raises up her hand and opposes Suzune, telling her about how haughty and mighty Suzune thinks she is. Suzune sees no flaw in her plan, which is actually a good one in the long run. However, Kei tells her she's not going to sit by and watch Suzune use the other students like that. She then asks for the opinions of the other students. Everyone seems to side with Ki, and Suzune gets labeled as a selfish and cruel person who just wants to use anybody in her disposition to get what she wants. Hirata stops the argument and asks everyone to vote for both sides. They'll go with whoever's ideas win the vote. The class votes and the majority falls in favor of Suzune's plan. Hirata ends the argument and continues discussing the activities of the sports festival. After their discussion, Kei finds Ayano Koji and asks him why he sent her the mail to oppose Suzune in class. Ayano Koji tells her not to ask too many questions or try to figure out his thought process so she doesn't get in trouble. However, he does tell her his every wish is to take Class D to Class A. Ki gets offended and confronts him for thinking he's better than everyone else. Ayano Koji tells her not to focus on the small things. Before he leaves, he tells Ki that Class D will produce a traitor amongst them that'll rat them out at the sports festival. He tells Ki to wait and find out how the person would reveal themselves. When it's time for the event player selection, all students change into their PE clothing and meet at the auditorium. There the boys test out their grip strength. Suda pulls a hopping 82 kilograms of force. However, Ayano Koji comfortably pulls an average score of 60 without breaking a sweat. After the trials, Sudo gets chosen for all voluntary events. The others also get chosen, and they'd all hit the tracks. Suzune talks down to one of the girls there and Ayano Koji intervenes. Turns out one of the events in the tournament is the three-legged race. Ayano Koji humbles Suzune and teaches her a new way to work with her partner during the race. After teaching her a thing or two, Ayano Koji invites Suzune for some recon mission with him the following day to prove that Kushida is the traitor of Class D. Ayano Koji's suspects. She revealed herself as the VIP to Ryuin during the second special test on the cruise ship. Suzune questions Ayano Koji's accusations of Kushida being their class's traitor. However, Ayano Koji gives her reason to believe Kushida is exchanging her class's information for some private points. Ayano Koji tells Suzune to think about her next move very carefully if she wishes to lead the class in the near future. Suzune arranges a meeting between Kushida and Ayano Koji. At the meeting, Suzune outrightly asks Kushida if she was the one who leaked the VIP's information to Ryuin on the ship. Kushida acts surprised at the accusation, but Suzune tells she's not sure if she can trust her anymore. Kushida reassures Suzune that she's only working towards their success and nothing more. Suzune keeps quiet and stops talking. On D-Day, the announcer advises the students to pick their candidates for the 100-meter dash. Sudo gets in front of his colleagues and begins encouraging them to bring home the win. In the meantime, Sake Anaji meets with her other colleagues to ask them about the progress of their plan. Her colleague tells her Class D is falling just right into their trap. There shouldn't be anything to worry about as long as no one surpasses Shudo's capacity. The tournament begins and Team Red takes the lead with 2011 points compared to Team White, who got 1891 points. The president of the student council competes in the 100-meter boys dash and wins. Suzune gets sullen at her brother's win. Koenji decides to sit the sports event out again. This annoys Shudo, and he shouts at Koenji. Thankfully, Hirata was there to stop him from making another mess of himself. The next sports event, Topple the Pole, starts off with Team White against Team Red as usual. This time, the greater majority of Team White's people all rush to stop Shudo from getting over to Team White's pole. Since Shudo is the only problem they should be worried about, they all make sure to pin him to the ground. This gives Team White the upper hand and they topple Red's pole in due time. Ryuin makes sure to talk down on Shudo and quell the spirits. The game ends in Team White's favor. Shudo gets very annoyed with his teammates and blames them for his loss. Suzune does a little practice before her race and accidentally collides with one of Class C's students, Kinoshita. This causes a serious injury to the student and she's rushed to the clinic. Ayano meets with Suzune and makes sure she's fit for the next activity. Suzune assures him she'll be fine despite her injury. On the next all-girls event, the girls on Team White tackle Suzune and secure an easy win for Team White. After the event, Suno approaches Suzune to offer some words of comfort to her. He promises to help her win the other events and make sure Team Red gets back in the lead. Unfortunately for Team Red, Suno falls into Ryuin's provocations and costs his team the win. After the event, Team White gets very close to Team Red in points. Ki meets with Ayano and asks him how the other teams know who to target and who not to target. Ayano tells Ki the traitor amongst them leaked their class list to Ryuin, so it'll be easier for him to beat them. Ki asks Ayano if he has any plans on how they can win the tournament. However, Ayano tells her he doesn't plan to win the tournament. Instead, he wants this loss to fuel the class's desire to win more challenges in the near future. Someone from Ryuin's team walks over to Shudo and riles him up more. The hot-tempered Shudo raises a fist to punch him. However, Hirata gets in the way and receives the punch instead. Almost immediately, everyone loses their respect for Shudo as their leader. Shudo doesn't seem to care as he just ups and leaves. The school lets the students take a 50-minute break. Ayano sees the look of despair on Suzune's face and tells her to talk Shudo back into the team. Suzune is about to give up, but Ayano speaks some sense into her head and tells her Shudo is an indispensable weapon in her arsenal if she wishes to beat Ryuin in his own game, as he's the only one who can threaten their success in the tournament. During lunch, Ki and Hirata ask Ayano to reveal the traitor in their class to them. However, Ayano keeps quiet. At that moment, Kushida calls for Suzune and tells her Kinoshita, the lady she bumped into earlier, was suffering from terrible injuries. Suzune gets to the clinic and finds Ryuin there with Kinoshita. Ryuin makes Kinoshita lie about what really happened. With no other choice, Kinoshita made it seem like Suzune ran into her on purpose. Ryuin shows Suzune the terrible injury on Kinoshita's legs and threatens to take Suzune to court unless she strikes a deal with him. If she wishes to keep the matter private, Suzune is to give Ryuin 1,000,000 private points. Suzune turns down the offer, but soon asks Ryuin for another chance. This time, Ryuin tells her to grovel at his feet if she wishes to make things go away. Suzune leaves the clinic and meets her brother, the president, on the way. She tells her brother about her failures and assures him she'll make up for it one way or the other. Suzune decides to play the last trick in her book to put Class D on top. Suzune catches up to Shudo as he takes the elevator up to the exit. She stops him and talks some sense into his head. At first, Shudo tells her his sob story of how his parents were trashy people who never thought much of themselves. Basically, Shudo is a child born out of wedlock and is already used to being talked down on by others. As a result, he's learned not to care too much about what people say about him. He keeps shouting at Suzune and complaining that his teammates keep slowing him down. Suzune tries to reason, but all her efforts towards making things work out are met with disdain from Shudo. Just then, the announcer on the PA announces the commencement of the afternoon session. Shudo gets back into the elevator to leave for his room. Suzune tells him she'll wait for him till he returns. Minutes before the afternoon session begins, Ayano prepares for the three-legged race with Kushida. While they tie each other's feet together, Ayano outrightly asks Kushida if she was the one who leaked their class information to Ryuin and his class. Kushida tries to act all nice and innocent, but Ayano only keeps pressuring her until she admits to her son. Kushida tells Ayano that she leaked the class list to Class C. However, she reminds Ayano about her accusation in the beginning. Should he try to report her, she would push forward a false grape accusation against him. Ayano tells her he has no intention of reporting her in the first place, so she shouldn't worry. He, however, asks Kushida what her motivation for betraying her class was. Was it for the points, or is there something much more than that? Kushida tells Ayano she's betraying her class just so she makes sure Suzune gets expelled. Now that Ayano knows all about her plans, she also plans to watch him get expelled as well. Now, if that isn't witch behavior, I don't know what is. Shudo gets back to the auditorium and is surprised to see Suzune still there waiting for him. He ignores her and gets a drink from the vending machine before going on his way. Suzune, however, stops him and relates her life to his. She tells him about the gap between her perfect brother and her, not leaving how she's always wanted to meet up with him in every aspect of life. She's become so focused on reaching her brother that she lost the need to have friends. But now that she has seen the light, she knows she needs friends to achieve her goals. She pleads with Sudo to help her get her class to Class A. Sudo changes his mind and happily succumbs to her request. Sudo gets back to the field with Suzune and apologizes for acting like a jerk earlier on. Class D is soon back to their normal selves. Suzune and one other dude decide to sit the afternoon session out as they sprain their ankles. Ayanokoji shows up and fills in for the guy. The afternoon session begins in a few minutes with a relay race. Ayanokoji is paired with the president of the student council to run the last lap of the race. Ayanokoji challenges the president to a race with him and tells him he isn't going to go easy on him. The president gets the baton first, but he waits for Ayanokoji to get his baton before he begins his race. When Ayanokoji gets it, he begins his race with the president. Together, the duo race past all the other runners all the way to the finish line. Still, Ayanokoji allows the president to win the race by an inch. After the entire sports session, Ki and the entire class commend Ayanokoji for the excellent race. Suzune approaches him and thanks him for exposing her to new levels of growth in her life. Suzune's conviction to take her class to the top becomes stronger. A few hours later, Suzune meets with Ryuen and Kushida to grovel at his feet to fulfill her part of the deal. Before doing that, however, she calls out Kushida for the traitor she is and asks her why she would want her expelled. Kushida tells her she needs to eliminate everyone who knows about her dark past. She then threatens to put Suzune's brother in trouble if she tries to report her in any way. Suzune sucks it up and gets down to business. Before she does so, Ryuen lets Suzune know that he was the one who crushed Kinoshida's leg to make the injury look very bad so as to bring Suzune to her knees. Just then, Suzune brings out her phone and tells Ryuen that she's been recording him all this while. If he tries anything out of the blue, she'll release the recording to the president's council. Unfortunately for her, Ryuen was also recording their conversation. He tells Suzune to grovel at his feet. Just as she's about to do so, Ryuen receives an email with a recording sent as an attachment. He listens to the recording and immediately shows it to her. Turns out Ayanokoji had pre-recorded Ryuen's discussion with Kinoshita when he asked her to crush Suzune to the ground. Ryuen immediately stops the harassment and calls it a day. Suzune gets to keep her dignity. A few days later, the president of the Students' Council, Horikita Mutaba, gives his farewell speech as he finally steps down from being the president council for the school. The new president steps on stage and tells the students about his plans for the students in the school. He plans to make the entire school into a meritocracy and ensure only students with the skills remain at the top of the class. After the speech, Katsureji meets up with Ayanokoji to warn him about Ryuen. He regrets ever dealing with the snake and wouldn't want the new star in the school to get backstabbed by the ruthless Ryuen. Ayanokoji thanks him for the concern and keeps walking. Sakura catches up to him and asks him to meet her somewhere private. On getting there, she asks Ayanokoji if he's already seeing someone. Ayanokoji tells her he's single at the moment. Sakura smiles and collects his number before running away shyly. Ki spectates the entire meeting from the shadows. In their next class, Sei reveals the results of their midterm tests. Quite a number of students pass and get commended by Sei. Following her praise, Sei tells them about the next special exam, the paper shuffle. This time, the entire class are to be paired in teams of 2 after their next minute test to embark on a challenge to get bonus points for their total score. This time, it won't affect their overall score. However, Sei tells them their next May test questions are going to be set by other classes. She then explains a little further and tells them she'll send an email in a few days explaining the rules on how to craft the test questions for the other different classes. After the class, Suzune asks Ayanokoji to join her for a strategy meeting, which is holding in a few minutes' time. When she leaves, Ayanokoji receives a series of emails from Ki, asking him about his relationship with Sakura. Ayanokoji catches on to the fact that she may be jealous and calls her out for it. Ki is about to type her response when Hirata calls her for the strategy meeting. Ki joins Hirata and the others by the stairway. Kushida joins them shortly, and this makes things very difficult for Suzune. She quickly excuses herself and adjourns the meeting. When everyone's gone, she takes Ayanokoji to an empty classroom to tell him about Kushida's past. Apparently, Kushida is the lead suspect in an incident that happened within her class back in middle school. Although the story really isn't clear enough, it's not too far-fetched that Kushida would be involved in something that bizarre. Ayanokoji tells Suzune that they have to nip this Kushida problem in the bud, meaning they have to get her expelled. However, Suzune tells him she wants to try the diplomatic way of settling things before getting violent with her. Ayanokoji agrees with her wish and retracts his steps. Suzune thanks him for respecting her wish and gets back to her dorm. That evening, Ryuen calls his class together and holds a meeting with them to fish out the traitor amongst them. He walks over to Manab, the ringleader of Ki's bully team, and questions her. Manab folds and apologizes for her wrongdoing. Ryuen tells her it's okay as long as she exposes the mastermind pulling the strings behind Class D. Ryuen narrows down the mastermind to either Yukimura or Ayanokoji. Ibuki, who's near him, tells him the mastermind can't possibly be the weakling they know as Ayanokoji, the perfect background character, but Ryuen remains unsure of the true mastermind. He takes out his phone and places a call to Kushida to get her thoughts on the matter. Later that day, Ayano Koji and Suzune join the others at a cafe to discuss their strategy for the paper shuffle. Suzune proposes they pair the lowest-ranking students with the highest-ranking student to increase their chances of getting good scores. Everyone reasons with this strategy, so they all agree to Suzune's plan. They also guess out the class, setting their questions to be Class C. That night, Ayano Koji receives a call from Ki. After picking it up, Ki continues her investigation into Ayano Koji and Sakura's relationship. Ayano Koji tells her not to worry about Sakura as he doesn't plan on going out with her. Before they end the call, Ayano Koji tells Ki to make sure she calls him first if anyone ever comes near her to harm her. Ki blushes and ends the call. The day after the mini-test, Sei announces the results and Ayano Koji finds out he's paired with Sakura for the paper shuffle test. Ki is not happy. After getting paired up, Haruna organizes a meeting to discuss how they'll go about the paper shuffle test. Kushida spaces out and recalls horrendous details about her past. She snaps back to reality a few minutes later and listens to Harada's plan. She makes sure to include herself in the groups just so she can betray her class once again. Suzune and Ayano Koji keep their eyes peeled for any tricks she may want to try again. As expected, Kushida gets up and leaves the class in a suspicious manner. While Harada and Suzune discuss, two students approach them to talk about their bad pairing. Both of them are bad at the same things, so pairing them up for the paper shuffle would only make things worse. Yukumura steps and offers to help the students overcome their boundaries and help them learn new things. Suzune allows him to do so, but she also assigns Ayano Koji to watch over Yukumura and the students to make sure they're really learning. Ayano Koji accompanies the three of them during their next meeting and finds out Yukumura is actually good at identifying problems and teaching people new stuff. Yukumura starts by giving the students a brief assessment test to figure out their level of understanding. After the test, he's shocked to find out they actually think the exact same way. Teaching them would be easy. While they do their thing, Ayano Koji remembers that his birthday is near. They complete their discussion about the paper shuffling test and continue their day. On their way to their dorms, Ayano Koji tells Suzune to prepare tricky questions for the paper shuffling test. Suzune tells she's working with Harada to set good questions for the opposing class. About Kushida, Suzune tells him she has a plan to take care of her. Before leaving him, Suzune asks Ayano Koji to drop her study group one of these days. Ayano Koji agrees to her and continues walking. Before going far, he receives a text from Ryuen asking him about his true identity. In the next scene, Ayano Koji is seen with Sakura in the library on their next study group meeting. Suzune and the others join them and they begin their study session. The past Kushida also joins them from beginning to finish. Once the study session is over, everyone but Suzune and Ayano Koji leaves. Suzune talks about her beef with Kushida again and promises to meet her after school to discuss things with her. Up next, Suzune meets up with Kushida and asks her why she really wants her gone. Kushida tells her she wants to get rid of everybody who knew about her past and was in that school with her. Suzune tells her to make a bet with her. If Kushida scores higher than Suzune in the upcoming finals, Suzune leaves the school. Otherwise, Kushida would have to stop sabotaging Suzune's plans. Kushida talks out the terms and conditions for such and eventually accepts it after seeing that everything's tailored to her advantage. Suzune brings in her brother to stand witness of the bet and make sure nobody goes back on their word. By nightfall, Kushida meets with Ayano Koji and Suzune to inform them of another condition. If she gets a higher score than Suzune in math, Ayano Koji also drops out of the school. Ayano Koji accepts the condition and states his own. If he's to adhere to Kushida's condition, then she'll have to tell him about the things she did in middle school. Kushida changes her countenance and begins her story. So it seems Kushida is someone who's always been showered with praises ever since she was born. She became addicted to being the center of attraction so much that she thought the same would happen in middle school. To nobody's surprise, she finds out she's not so special and gets annoyed. One day, she realizes that she can earn people validation if she gets to do all their hard work for them. This pays off for a little while until Kushida gets tired of doing people's dirty work for them. At night after school, she'll take out her frustration by writing horrible things about her middle school classmates on her blog and post it for all to see. One day, the students found out about her blog and began bullying her for being a loser. Kushida retaliates by revealing the secrets of every classmate in her class. This causes a huge fight between everyone in the class. All Kushida did was say a few things and stand back to watch her colleagues beat themselves to a pulp, both boys and girls. She tells Suzune and Ayano Koji that she does know a few things about the current Class D and can end them in a heartbeat. Suzune is shocked at the extent the attention seeker would go to just to get what she solely craves. The next day after accepting Suzune's bet, Kushida meets with Ryuen to ask him for the questions his class wrote for Class D. This way, she'll be guaranteed a win for sure. Ryuen asks her what he'll get in return. Kushida tells him she'll make sure to leak Class D's questions to him so he can pass the paper shuffle easily. Before leaving, she asks him about the progress on finding the Mastermind. Ryuen tells he's got the situation under control. On their next study meeting, Yukumura sets some mock questions for Miyaki and Haseby, the two students he's tutoring. After complaining a bit about the question's complexity, Haseby stands up to get a refill. Someone puts their leg in the way and causes her to drop her cup. Ryuen steps on the cup and faces Ayano Koji. He brings Hayori, one of his classmates, to come check out Ayano Koji and maybe figure out if she remembers his face. Unfortunately, she doesn't remember. Ryuen takes his leave almost immediately. After their study break, everyone takes an ice cream and popsicle break. Ayano Koji keeps quiet and listens to the others yap about ice cream and their normal lives. He looks straight ahead of him and sees a lady eavesdropping on their conversation. Hazeby tries to strengthen the bond in their group and asks to call the boys by their first name. Yukumura tells them to call him Kisi, his father's name from then on. Everyone agrees and they all go in for a shake. However, Sakura comes out of her hiding place and asks to join Ayano Koji's group. After much contemplation between the members, they all welcome her to join their study group. A few hours later, Ayano Koji tells Ki on a call that he's going to the movies with his group members the next day. He tells her about her role in the next day and hangs up the call immediately. After the call, Ayano Koji receives an email wishing him a happy birthday. The sender appears to be Ki as well. On the very next day, Suzune gets everyone in her study group together to discuss the test results. Kushida wishes everyone a smooth paper shuffle and keeps smiling. Ki gets angry and confronts her. She tells Kushida how uncomfortable she feels, always smiling and acting nice all the time when deep down she's probably shaming her. Things get out of hand and Ki spills her drink on Kushida's chest. Hirata steps in and stops Ki from doing any more harm. Ayano Koji sits nearby and observes the entire scenery playing out in front of him. Once their study break is over, Kushida meets with Sei and hands over her own question papers. Before leaving, she tells her not to use any other question papers any student may present her in the future. Sei nods in agreement and collects Kushida's question papers. Up next, Kushida takes the question papers from Class D to Ryu and gets their own questions in return. The day of the paper shuffle test finally comes and everyone settles in class very early in the morning to write the test. When the hour is upon them, everyone keeps quiet and reads their question papers before starting the test. Kushida gets the shock of her life when she finds out the questions in front of her don't tally with the ones Ryuen gave her. She opens her eyes out wide as she realizes she's lost. After the test, Kushida gets up seething with rage and rushes to meet Ryuen. When asked for an explanation, Ryuen tells her she played right into Suzune's trap. Apparently, Suzune initially went forward to Sei, their homeroom teacher, to tender their test question papers. Before leaving, she told Sei to pretend to accept any other question papers somebody like Kushida could have brought and rip it to shreds once she's gone. Sei did that when Kushida came to give her the question papers. Suzune had given Ryuen the real test questions and had asked him to deceive Kushida till the very end. Ryuen walks near Kushida and finds the cheat sheet Ki had planted in her blazer earlier on. He then leaves Kushida to wallow in her own failure to get back to his class. The next time Suzune and Kushida meet, Suzune proposes they both bury the hatchet and move on. However, Kushida refuses to do so and tells she'll just shift her sights to the next person on the list, Ayano Koji. Big mistake, girl. Very big mistake. Ryuen sends the Mastermind a picture of Ki and threatens to harm her if the Mastermind doesn't reveal himself to him in due time. The Mastermind, Ayano Koji, dares him to challenge him and see what will come upon him. The results of the paper shuffle exam come out in a few days. Hirata and the other Class D students meet up in an outdoor cafe. Firstly, they express their joy at the fact that nobody's getting expelled from their class before moving forward to discuss their next move in achieving their goal. Just then, they find Ichinos from Class B moving and chatting with Sakayanaji, the queen of Class A. They discuss a little bit about Ichiyo's prowess and conclude that it'll be better to keep her at arm's length. Hasebi talks about Christmas and Sakura asks Ayano Koji out on a Christmas date with her. Ayano Koji refuses to answer her and just keeps thinking of his next move. He looks back as though he saw a certain eavesdropping and wonders if the person watching him this time is Ki. Later on, while Ki walks back to her dorm, she finds someone following her and gets more careful. That night, she reports the incident to Ayano Koji, telling him she suspects the person to be from C class. Ayano Koji assures her that he's looking out for him and asks her for the thing he asked her to do. Kei tells she did a little stalking and found someone from class is stalking one of their study sessions. Ayano Koji ends the call and wonders what Sakayanaji has planned. The next day at school, Sudo complains about the Class C students always trying to rile him up. Ayano Koji commends Suzune for putting Suno on a leash. Suzune tells him it's nothing and keeps wondering why the Class C people are trying to raise them up. Suzune asks Ayano Koji if he has a plan to take Ryuen down. As usual, Ayano Koji keeps her out of his plans and reassures her that he's still interested in taking his class higher. Just then, Suzune takes out a book that's due to be returned to the library and asks Ayano Koji to return it for her. Ayano Koji gets to the library and finds Hayori trying to reach a book. He helps her get the book and the do talk about books. Hayori recommends some books to read, but Ayano Koji questions her intentions. Who knows? She could be another spy planted by Ryuen to investigate him. Hayori tells him she takes no interest in such a thing and leaves. At that moment, Sei finds Ayano Koji in the library and takes him to an office. There, he meets someone he wished to never see again, that is, the doctor who trained him back when he was younger. A little insight is given into Ayano Koji's story. So Ayano Koji is a part of a very dark experiment conducted by the man in front of him. The experiment involved gathering a bunch of orphans and allowing them undergo ruthless mental and physical exercises just so they can turn out to be mindless psychopaths with extraordinary mental and physical capabilities. So far, Ayano Koji is the best specimen the doctor has produced so far, so he's there to have him back. He even uses a sad story of one of their employees' demise to try to get Ayano Koji to drop out willingly. Thankfully, Ayano Koji refuses to drop out of the school, but when the doctor gets insistent, the chairman of the school, Sakayaneji's father, stops by and backs Ayano Koji up. The doctor accepts defeat and leaves. Ayano Koji also takes his leave and has a word with Sei outside the office. Now that he knows Sei's threats of having him expelled was nothing but a farce, he's free to do whatever he wants to do. He tells her never to contact him about getting her class to Class A ever again. Later that night, Ayano Koji calls Ki to talk things out and apologize for neglecting her all these while. Ki accepts his apology and asks him something that has been bugging her. She asks him why he never for once showed his smartness to the class. If he did, he would have been a celebrity and all. Ayano Koji tells her he prefers being the background character and would leave it at that. He finishes his apology and tells her he's no longer interested in getting their class to Class A. He'll leave that in Susan's hands and step down. Before hanging up, Ayano Koji tells her that that'll be their last call since there's nothing keeping their relationship anymore. Ki tries to talk sense into him, but that doesn't work out as Ayanochi hangs up the phone. The next day, Ayano Koji ignores Ki and tells her to be very careful about the Class C students. A few hours into their school day, Ryuin visits Class D to fish out the mastermind himself. He spots Komonji leaving the class and tells his goons to follow him. Suzune and the others sense Ryuin's onto something and may try to harm Komonji in the yard. They quickly rush towards the scene to stop things from getting out of hand. Ryuin tries to talk down Komonji, but the proud man keeps countering his sassy remarks. After the short exchange of words, Ryuin ends up getting annoyed as Komonji pays him back in his own medicine. At one point, Sakayonaji and her people also join the scene to witness what will happen. Ryuin keeps asking Kyounji incriminating questions, hoping for him to slip up and admit to being the mastermind pulling Class D's strings. Unfortunately for him, Komonji lets him know in the harshest way possible that he isn't the mastermind. Ryuin threatens to become violent if he keeps on spouting insultive remarks at him. However, Komonji tells him to bring it on and face him square and fair. However, Ryuin knows he can't do such a thing out in the open and in front of everyone. He retreats for a while and lets Komonji go. Sakayonaji teases Ryuin a little bit and hits a nerve. Ryuin reacts to this and sends a spinning kick towards Sakayonaji's head. Thankfully, one of her bodyguards is there to save her from any harm. So the little misunderstanding is over and Komonji goes his merry way. Ryuin's mastermind still remains at large. Who could it be? That's the question on his mind. He asks Suzune about Komonji's personality. Suzune, however, calls Ryuin's recent behaviors erratic and wonders how long he's willing to keep it going. Ryuin keeps his cool and tells them the game will soon end once he finds the mastermind behind Class D. Ayano Koji stands there silent and observes from behind the scenes. That night, Ryuin takes his two bodyguards outside and wonders why their plans to corner the mastermind aren't working. Ibuki asks him why he's so intent on having the mastermind cornered. Ryuin tells her he's just enjoying himself, nothing more, nothing less. Ryuin then decides to play the last card in his arsenal, a card so dangerous that if caught could lead to his expulsion. He begins this plan by calling in the bait to come meet him at a construction site. They get there first and paint out all the cameras there to avoid getting caught. With the night temperatures well near freezing point, Ryuin, Ibuki, Albert, and another guy wait for the bait to walk into their trap. Soon, Kat arrives at the building and meets up with Ryuin. She tries to speak her way out of the impending danger, but Ryuin was already set on torturing her till she gives him the name of the mastermind behind Class D's success. Ryuin asks Ki to reveal the name of the mastermind so he won't release her past to the world to see. Ki refuses to betray Ayano Koji and keeps quiet. Ryuin retraces his steps and leaves things to his goons. Ishizaki, the last guy with them, takes a bottle of cold water and pours it on her head to begin the torture process. Over the next few minutes, Ryuin and his people torture Ki to get the name of the criminal mastermind. At that moment, Ayano Koji gets out from the convenience store after buying some groceries. In the meantime, Ryuin keeps up with the torture. Still, Kid refuses to give him Ayano Koji's name. Ryuin gets impatient and picks Ki up to do horrible things to her. Ryuin continues torturing Ki, hoping she would slip up and reveal the name of the mastermind behind Class D. Still, Ki keeps her stance and refuses to give up Ayano Koji's name. Ryuin tells her the meeting with the bullies earlier on was a way of Ayano Koji to turn her into his pawn. While Ryuin is absolutely correct about his theory, Ki still refuses to give in to his claims. Ryuin holds her hair and stands her up to see why she's still protecting such a cruel master. In her mind, Kai thinks of herself as a cool person for holding out till the end. She still has a sliver of hope that Ayano Koji would come rescue her eventually. In the meantime, Ayano Koji refuses to join the other classmates on their outing. Instead, he calls for a meeting with Sei in an empty classroom to tell her about the incident happening currently. After hearing the horrible things Ryuin is doing to Ki at that moment, Sei still tries to strike a deal to get Ayano Koji to help elevate Class D. Ayano Koji takes a different route. Instead of asking her for help, Ayano Koji takes her to meet Manav, the former president, so she witnesses their plan. Manav agrees to testify that Class C started the fight should things go very wrong. In return, Ayano Koji would help Suzune get an official position in the student council board. After the deal is made, Ayano Koji takes his leave. C tries to call them back, but Manabe tells her Ayano Koji intends to end the war with Class C on his own. Ayano Koji gets to the building under construction and meets Albert at the entrance. He reveals his identity to Albert, who then lets him inside. On getting inside, Ki is surprised and relieved to see Ayano Koji keep his end of the deal. Ayano Koji finally reveals his true self as the mastermind behind the wondrous events that's been putting Class D in the spotlight. Ibuki cannot believe his claims, but Ayano Koji tells her about the special test on the island. Ryuin, after seeing the fear disappear from Ki's eyes, is convinced that Ayano Koji is the true mastermind of Class D. He looks at Ayano Koji with a smug look on his face and asks him how he intends to fight all four of them right there to free Ki. Ayano Koji tells him he can handle all four of them in one-on-one combat, so it shouldn't be a problem for him. Ayano Koji shows no fear and challenges Ryuin to come at him. Ishizaki goes first, Albert second, and then Ibuki third. Ayano Koji shocks Ryuin and displays adept fighting abilities. Mere minutes into the fight, he knocks down Albert and Ishizaki. Before continuing the fight, he tells Ryuin that them being there was all part of the plan to eliminate the Class C problem all along. Ibuki rushes at him, and Ayano Koji knocks her down as well. Now it's all down to a 1 versus 1 between Ryuin and Ayano Koji. Ryuin, who has no special martial arts skill, uses his street fight technique to try and subdue Ayano Koji. However, Ayano Koji sees through his moves and pins him down in a few more moves. While fighting, Ryuin tells Ayano Koji that he's never felt afraid of anything or anyone in his entire life. Ayano Koji also replies to him, saying that he never for once felt afraid of him or anybody else in the entire school. He thinks logically and never does anything out of emotions. Ayano Koji, after pinning Ryuin down, restructures Ryuin's face and makes him feel that emotion he never thought he'd have in his entire life, fear. Ayano Koji knocks the mighty Ryuin down and walks over to Ayano Koji. He apologizes to Ki for coming later than expected. Then he asks her why she never released his name to Ryuin. Ki cries and tells him she doesn't even know. Ayano Koji holds her to himself and promises to never ever let her go ever again. The next day, Imuki gets to Ryuin's dorm room but doesn't find him there. She tried calling him, but he didn't pick up the phone. She then runs around school searching for him, only to find him walking towards the school gate, all bandaged up and calm. Ryuin, for the first time, apologizes for using Ibuki. He even gives her his points and steps down from the tyrant of Class C. Ibuki doesn't recognize this side of Ryuin, so she tries talking him back into becoming the leader of Class C. Ryuin, who seems to have made his resolve, tells Ibuki that he's caved in and won't be causing any trouble again. Ibuki gets annoyed and leaves him. Ayano Koji, who's been eavesdropping all along, decides to use Ryuin's new self to his advantage. Meanwhile, Ki sits in her bed thinking about Ayano Koji and the way the weakest boy in their class took down 4 adults to save her from trouble. When she finally realizes it, it's already too late. She's fallen in love with the psychopath we all know as Ayano Koji. Later on, she prepares herself and goes out with Sakura. There, Sakura tells her she plans on asking Ayano Koji out on a date on Christmas Day. She shows Ki her date plan and asks for a review. Ki reads through it and finds out Ki plans to ask Ayano Koji to be her boyfriend. She is very jealous and begins asking weird questions about the date. When she finds out the date would be on Christmas Day, she decides to go on a double date with Harada just to spy on the both of them. That night, Ki spends her time wondering about Ayano Koji's plans for the date. While she wonders, she sees Ayano Koji's call. Upon picking it up, Ayano Koji talks to her and asks her to find some information on Sakura. When she's done, she's to mail her findings to him. He hangs up the call immediately and leaves Ki to sleepless nights. Ayano Koji meets up with Suzune that night to talk about her placement in the student council. He tells her that her elder brother had made a deal with her to get her into the student council. Suzune refuses to believe Ayano Koji, but then Ayano Koji calls her brother and gives her the phone. After talking to her brother, Suzune finds out Ayano Koji was telling the truth after all. Ayano Koji takes his leave and wishes her a good day. Up next, Ayano Koji calls Ryuin to meet him somewhere secluded. When he arrives, Ayano Koji commends Ryuin for holding up against him until the end. Ryuin pledges his allegiance to Ayano Koji and asks what his next move will be. Ayano Koji tells him he plans to weed out the person sabotaging Class D. He promises to expel Kushida as soon as possible. The next day, Sakura meets up with Ayano Koji. Ki and Harada join them later, and they kickstart the date. They hit the cinema to watch a few movies before going to the restaurant later on. As they sip their cup of tea, Ki keeps her eyes peeled looking for signs of Ayano Koji liking Sakura. By evening time, the date ends. Sakura walks Ayano Koji to a secluded walkway and asks him to be her boyfriend. Ayano Koji apologizes and politely rejects her. Sakura tears up and rushes back to her dorm room crying. When she's gone, Kai reveals herself from hiding. A few hours later, Ki asks Ayano why he rejected Sakura. Ayano tells her Sakura can't be a good substitute for her. Ki smiles and gives Ayano a present. He collects it and gives her cold medicine as his own present. She takes what she gets and thanks him for the help. Ayano walks Ki home and notices her smiling throughout the entire trip. In his mind, Ayano feels no affection for her. Everything is just going according to his plan. Now that Ki thinks he's in love with her, she'll be much more inclined to do things willingly for him and be his pawn in the long run. Now, if that isn't psychopathic, I don't know what is.